Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah. All right, welcome. Welcome to the first annual Student New York Film Festival, our first ever panel.
That's right.
Woo! Yeah. Cheers.
Everybody in the back, settle down, quiet. There's dozens of people.
Dozens. We got coffee and lemonade. It's gonna be lit up in here.
So many hoppers.
So great.
I'm Max. I'm the festival director of the Student New York Film Festival. And I am joined here. I probably should have prepared like an introduction.
I'm sure you
Oh yes, this is my Paul book. So why don't you know what? Because I couldn't do it more better than you guys can. Can you guys introduce yourselves?
How old are you with the English? I just want.
I just came back from it.
Where'd you go to college?
Exactly.
You know what's funny? I just came back from an international trip, and I feel like my English has gotten worse because
You're correct.
I could not speak English to anyone there.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So we're gonna. That's just a minor for Paul.
Yeah.
Okay. Paul, please.
Introduce you? No. I am Paul Guyot. I've been a professional screenwriter, producer for 25 years, half my life. I came to be part of this because I have so much respect for what Max is doing with this student-only New York Film Festival, and I'm super excited to be here.
Hey everybody.
Yeah.
I am Craig T. Williams. I am a born and bred New Yorker, born in Harlem Hospital. So
3 blocks
I'm
from here.
3 blocks from where I grew up.
Wow.
Just down the street. I'm an indie filmmaker, turned TV writer, turned producer, turned all things. My wife and I started our production company, Redwall Productions, over 20 years ago, and to date we've made over 50 film projects. Mia's writer-producer, she is director.
She's also an amazing theater actor. She's been on Broadway. She's off Broadway. She's everywhere.
Yes, she is. And yeah, we make stuff and we live out in the world as artists.
That's amazing.
Yes.
So I want to tell you guys how I found Paul. I mean, I guess Craig. I found Craig through Paul. And I want to tell you how I found Paul. Found Paul originally on TikTok. Makes very, very, very important videos. The most important videos I think a screenwriter can watch. I think there's like 2 other TikTok accounts that really do.
We're not here to talk about those, are we?
Easy now. We're just kidding. No, keep going. Keep going. Keep going.
Michael Jamin.
Yes, Michael. Yeah.
Michael
Jamin
Jamin.
is
Michael
great.
Jamin.
And
Yes.
I don't know his full name, but I know his name is Nick. And it says
WJ Sky. Nick's okay. But anyone who puts WJ screenwriter in their name, it's like
Well, just about
okay.
people know, but he's also
He's
a-
yeah.
He's
I've seen him.
no,
He's decent. He's got some credits.
He's a good
Yeah.
no, but like
Yeah. No, I liked him. He
doesn't
just did a thing about character introductions that I disagree with, but we won't get into that.
okay, we won't get into that.
Nick, hit me up if you're listening to this.
But
But
Paul's TikTok handle
Paul's TikTok
is...
is Screenwriting Truth.
Yes.
Yes.
And that's so important to get the truth because, you know, I wanted to be a screenwriter since I was in high school. I think probably senior year. What?
Decades ago.
Decades ago. Decades ago. I wanted to be a screenwriter since high school, since senior year. You want to see how old you are? I was in high school.
No.
I graduated high school 2021. I was a junior. COVID hit my junior year of high school. Sorry. I'm sorry. I love you guys. So
I have holes in my socks older than you.
That's when you and I met.
Yeah.
Anyways.
Anyway.
Everybody hold it down.
Born in 02. So, I wanted to be a screenwriter, and you know, when you're a young screenwriter, it's so hard to discern what is fact, what is fiction. I remember I was so lost. I originally took a class, a comedy writing class, by Brent Forrester, you know, in this class.
Yes.
And it was generally helpful. It was generally like, taught me all about the half-hour TV comedy pilot.
Brent's got a lot of credit. He did it for a while.
He
He's
did The
legit.
Office and The Simpsons and other shows. And I guess the first question. So for me, I can talk about all my journey, but I wanted to know for specifically you guys. So obviously, there's these two worlds of screenwriting. There's the fake one and there's the real one. In preparation for this, by the way, I watched The Matrix. I actually watched the movie.
Okay.
And the parallels are insane. The parallels. No,
They are?
I'm not even joking about like the parallels of like The Matrix and the screenwriting.
Oh, red pill, blue pill. I gotcha. Okay.
No, not only red pill, blue pill, but the fact that everyone lives. All the screenwriters on Coverfly who don't
I see where you're going.
who only have 4 action lines and who don't do any character descriptions like I was like months ago. Like this was me months ago. This was me before I read your book. I read your book in December. Everything before December is literally exactly how the gurus and everyone did it. And yeah, I guess reading the book is how I found out. How did you guys find out about this real world of screenwriting and how you can write like a novel, you can write like this and everything?
Well, I want to say, because it ties in, is how Craig and I became friends, and I adore this human being next to me. So, pandemic hit, we were all trapped in our homes and stuff, and there was this app that blew up called Clubhouse. The audio app, I don't know if anyone remembers it, but it was like basically audio Twitter, and so we're all trapped in our homes, and I get on this app like everyone else is, and I gravitate to the screenwriters and the writing people, and I'm listening to these rooms. It was basically chat rooms, but it was audio instead of text. And I hear this guy speaking about screenwriting, and I've never heard of Craig T. Williams, but everything he's saying, I'm like, oh, this guy's exactly right. This guy's exactly right. He's not part of the bullshit, which everything else was. 98% of everything else was all the cat saving stuff and all the things. And this guy was speaking truth. And I just kind of started stalking you, like following him around on Clubhouse. And then he and I connected because we spoke in the same rooms and stuff. And he asked me to read one of his scripts, and I said I would. And I'm not exaggerating. I'm not kidding. By the bottom of the first page of the first thing I read by Craig, I was like, this guy is a writer. He has such an original, specific voice. I don't even care what the story is, even though the story was badass. It was your Cool Modi one, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, and it was this pilot about the true story of this rap wars in the 80s. And I had so much fun reading his script because he's such an amazing writer. And so I finished that, and I was a fanboy and became like, oh my God, Craig, you know what you're doing. And we just kind of connected and became friends, but it was born out of that thing you're talking about, Max, of there literally are two worlds. There's the red pill and the blue pill, the people that have been brainwashed the last 30 years by Save the Cat and everything, and the people who are actual writers who get it. And this man is one of them. And his writing, I would put, and I'm not exaggerating it, I would put Craig's writing up with the best screenwriters in Hollywood. He is amazing. Everything I read of his is amazing, and he inspires me. And so that's all. Yeah, it's true.
So during the Clubhouse days, right, where you could go into these chat rooms, we call them chat rooms, where you're just looking at a person's avatar and you can read their bio. So you're gravitating towards the screenwriting groups, and I would go into some groups, and there would be like maybe 15 people in there. And Paul would be one of them, but then Randy Mayhem Singer, who wrote Mrs. Doubtfire.
Wow.
And there were just like all these, and the showrunner from Full House, Brian
Behar.
Brian Behar. So I would
Is this
start
like a
looking.
San Francisco thing? Like what's
No,
going
it was
on?
just like these people. They were all friends.
We were all trapped in our homes, so
Yes.
it's like we all
But
went
like
on
Full
Clubhouse.
House, Mrs. Doubtfire, that's like the same
right.
block in San
Yes.
Francisco.
Oh, I get you. Yes. Now, yeah. So I would go into these rooms, and I would see like these 15 people, and half of them were showrunners and high-level TV writers.
Wow.
and like legendary screenwriters. I'm like, I felt like I fell into the Matrix, right? And so they're talking amongst each other, and what I'm hearing is the things that have been going through my head, which is the things that you write, how you work in the business, how this is bullshit, how you know, people worry about things that they shouldn't worry about. So I heard Paul and I heard all these people talk about, and Bart Baker, our other friend, talk about screenplays and writing and the business of being a writer that spoke to me like no one had ever spoken to me before. And it was void of all the nonsense of you have to do this and you have to get that and you have to be this and you got to write this way, or as I used to say, they're going to kick you out of show business. Like none of that mattered. Like how you wrote on the page. What was most important, which was a journey that I had been on, which is how do I write who I am and still have some success. And it was like part of that whole journey that I was on, which had to do with the pandemic. Was like, you know what, fuck it. I'm gonna write the way I want to write, how I see it, how I feel it. And like being in those rooms and being amongst this company, it gave me permission to have my own voice. And that's when really things started to take off for me.
Yeah, voice is such an important thing, and something I didn't realize was important until I read Kill the Dog. Kill the Dog by Paul Guyot on Amazon right now. I'll put a link to it in the YouTube video down below.
Free copies for everybody here.
Okay.
Don't worry about it, just keep going.
Actually, you know what? This book is so important. I'm in film school right now. I tell my fellow people in my program, like, if anyone's a screenwriter, like, you can borrow my book. You can borrow my copy, and I will give it to you for free. And, like, because that's how badly I want people to read it. Like, I want people to, like, you know, I'll take them. And basically, the essence of the book is everything that screenwriters have been told by Blake Snyder and
Robert McKee, and John Truby, and Sid Field, and Linda Seeger, and Michael Haig, and
it's all a lie. It's all a lie. And I want to know. I think a question that we talk. I think that you've talked about on your TikTok, and I think it's worth exploring again. Is why? Why do these people make it up when they are not in there? Why would they? Like, it's almost evil. It's pretty much evil, and like why do they do it?
I think there's different reasons for different people. I think a lot of it comes from self-loathing and bitterness, and I am not being facetious. You know, when I was preparing to write the book and writing the book, I was doing a lot of research. I read all these books because I didn't want to talk about something without an informed opinion. And I also talked to people. I don't know if you remember the guy from TikTok or Clubhouse, Glenn. There was a guy who was a television writer that I connected on Clubhouse, and he was friends, literal friends with Blake Snyder for more than 10 years, like the last 10, 12 years of his life. Yeah. And I had long conversations with Glenn and really came to understand Blake, who everyone says was a mensch, was a beautiful, wonderful human being. So I don't want to speak ill of the dead, but he was so bitter and angry. That's where that book came out of, because, you know, he sold 2 screenplays really quick that were both co-written and both bought by the studio where his father and family friend worked. And then he was the guy, because when you sell something in Hollywood, you become hot. You get all the meetings. So he kept selling pitches and getting things optioned, but he never sold another screenplay in his life because he was a terrible writer, because of the fact that he wrote to this formula, this math equation, and he didn't understand how not to do it that way. And that's why he bashes Memento in the book, which is so insane. Chris Nolan, one of our greatest screenwriters, and I don't know how many times in Save the Cat, he says Memento is trash and Blank Check is brilliant. And so it's like that. And then John Truby is another guy who his entire screenwriting career consists of 13 episodes on either the first or second season of the original 21 Jump Street. He was fired by Stephen J. Cannell, and I heard the story firsthand because I wrote a pilot with Stephen, who became a very good friend of mine before he passed, and told me Truby was a terrible writer. And we fired him at the 13 episode break, and he never got a job again. So he started to write books about how you do it. And I think so many of those books are born out of that frustration. You know, Robert McKee was a failed screenwriter. He tried desperately to be a professional screenwriter. He wrote 2 freelance episodes of like the Columbo reboot and something else. You know, Sid Field's only credits were 2 episodes of a show from the 60s and a movie, I can't remember the name, I think it's called Spree or something, which is on the list as one of the worst films of the decade of the 60s ever made. That's his only credit. So there's a pattern here. I'm not bashing anyone. There is a legitimate pattern to all these authors.
So I have a question. When you were preparing to write the book, did you ever have any sort of, like, the words, the verbiage in the book is very harsh towards these people, and I feel like did you have any sort of fear about like being so hard on these people?
Yes.
And what was that? What
So
was that like?
the book you read is so much softer and nicer than the original. So this book was born out of Clubhouse. Craig and our friend Bart, they were there when the inception came. Like, should I write this book? You know, should I put my money where my mouth is, so to speak? And honestly, the very first draft of the book that I started writing was nothing more than a rant at these people and these authors and this industry of ripping people off. And every draft I would do, I toned it down some, and even like 3 or 4 drafts in, I sent it to a friend. He's like, "This is kind of you're crossing the line, man. You got to dial it back." So, yes, you're right. The book is harsh, and yet that's like the 5th or 6th softer draft than originally, because I was just angry. I was frustrated because people have literally been brainwashed ever since Save the Cat came out in 2003, 2004, and it sold 6 million copies, which, if anyone knows anything about the book industry, is an insane amount of books sold. And every screenwriting professor adapted that book and made it require reading for no other reason than it's math. It's a recipe, a formula to follow, and that's how academia teaches.
I literally noticed that when I had my screenwriting class, you know, I was like, well, who is this guy? And I mean, he hasn't sold a screenplay. He used to be very successful.
So here's the thing that I think that's important about the tone of the book, why it's important that Paul was as brutal, even though he softened it, as possible, is because it's a lot to break through. It's decades and decades of conditioning about this is how you have to do it. And in order to do that, because I fight it every day, right? I'm fighting the battle. He wrote a book. I just kind of speak to people one-on-one, which is exhausting. But I really have to get through to them, which is there is a way that you can exist as a writer that isn't dependent on the rules that people are going to beat you up with. Because people think that the rules are what make you a writer. It is not the rules that make you a writer. So for him to take that on and to put it in the book and say, you don't have to listen to the rules, people they seize up. It's like, well, if I don't listen to the rules, then how do I write? How do I make something if it's not the rule? How do I do that? So I think that's the part that we have to tackle in this journey as educators, as mentors, as people who really want to help writers succeed. It's like, how do we help them bridge the gap between the rules that they're going to hear every time they submit their script to some bullshit screenwriting competition, to some nonsense guru, and I some of them follow me, but I don't care, right? And you know, that's the fun thing also about being this age. We're gonna do fun. I mean, I just don't. right? Because I'm here to help the person find their voice so they can make a way in this business. That's what I want to do.
Yeah, it's definitely a process to. I noticed something that an interesting thing that I should speak up. An interesting thing that you said in the book is that you said your part on voice is like you said it won't be long because you have to find your voice.
Yeah.
And it's hard to find your voice, and I think I found my voice. I think I think I'm sort of starting to find it. I'm recovering from my international trip, which destroyed my writing ability because again, like it was like I didn't speak English for an entire,
And that broke you as a writer at some
No,
point?
literally, I was like trying to write on the plane back, and I was
Uh-huh.
just like the words that were being written. I was just like, this does not. This does not.
taking place.
This does not sound like I need to be in the United States for a
But
couple days.
here's what I want to offer to you,
Yeah.
right? Writing is a process, right? That moment on the plane is just part of the process. So if you wrote some nonsense on the plane, that's part of your process, right? You got to write sometimes the nonsense to get to the good stuff. So forgive yourself whatever garbage you wrote on the plane.
Yeah.
Because it's an important part of your journey. Sometimes we have to write the shit in order to get to the gems.
Always.
Always. That's the process. So,
I mean, think about it.
Yeah.
Shit is like fertilizer.
Yeah.
What does it do? It helps stuff grow. You
Yeah.
gotta write the bad stuff to get to the good stuff.
Yeah.
And I think too, to your earlier point about the book and all the brainwashing and everything, is unlearning something is much more difficult than learning something.
Yes. Yes.
And that's what, I don't know, I haven't looked how many reviews I have on the book, and generally 95% of them are really favorable, but there's 5%, they all say the exact same thing, and they're so scared, I can tell in their review. It's like, you're so mean to Blake Snyder, or, oh yeah, what about this? And it's like a toddler hitting back, and I feel bad for these people, because genuinely, like, I would love it if somebody came at me and said, hey, here's what I disagree about your book, this, that'd be fantastic. But all the negative reviews are just like, you're mean, you don't know, you're a name dropper, and I was like,
You're
okay.
complaining.
Yeah, and so it's just people that it's so scary to unlearn something. It's like unbecome who you are not.
Yeah. And I want to be very clear for the people watching and the people here. What you guys mean, like, what we mean when what the books say versus what reality is, and we can talk about a couple rules, but I really want to hear you guys' thoughts on reporting the story versus telling the story, and what that means, because I think for me that was the main thing. I never really knew. The only rules I knew were page count and reporting the story and
Don't say anything that's not on screen.
Oh, yeah.
And don't. Yeah.
Yeah.
All the.
I got.
right.
Yeah, I think I'd sort of.
Yeah.
I
That's why I used the Michael Clayton example in the book.
This was like, it was literally, looking back, it was literally like the Matrix, because Neo throughout the movie, apparently throughout his life, he had a hint that something was wrong. He had a hint that something was off, and then finally someone tells him, gives him the red pill, and it's like, okay, it's actually all a lie. And it's like, oh, well, that makes sense, because that explains this, and that. And that was like that for me. So I want to hear what is reporting the story in a screenplay versus telling a story, and how is that?
I would love to hear Craig speak to that, only because one of the many things that I adore about his writing, like I said, the main thing is his voice is so original, but you do a masterful job of that. You tell a story, like every sentence, and it's not just cool dialogue or whatever, every single sentence, little hashtag Black Love, like little tiny thing, just gems he drops in his script.
That's so awesome.
Like, he's got this thing, and it's these two characters speaking to each other, and it's a male and female, and they express this affection for each other, and then he just has in the screenplay, hashtag Black Love. And it's like, oh my God, like, that is telling a story. It's not reporting, which would be like, you know, these two characters really love each other. Like, talk about that.
Yeah. First of all, it makes me laugh. It entertains me. So that's
because
really
you're writing
important.
for yourself.
I'm writing for me, right? So
That's the
a
key.
really important part of this journey. Is if you're not entertained, if you're not scared, if it's a horror, if you're not moved, if it's a romantic drama, then you need to dig deeper and forget the rules. And it's like sometimes I write how I talk also. So if I were talking, I'd be like #Black Love, y'all, right? And I write that. And so they're hearing me in the script, but it plays into the tone, it plays into the genre. So I understand that now that that's what I'm doing. I didn't have the language for it before.
You weren't consciously trying to do that.
No.
You were just trusting yourself.
I was trusting
That's
myself,
to me
yes.
the biggest thing about voice is trust. Like
Yeah.
when you hear Tarantino speak and then you read his screenplays,
Yes.
it's like, oh my God, it's the exact same voice.
That's it.
Aaron Sorkin, it's
That's
the
it.
exact same voice.
Yes.
Craig T. Williams, that's what voice is. And so how do you find your voice? It's trusting yourself.
And trusting that the notes that you're going to get are going to be fucking stupid. They just are, right? And I'm not just, so I don't have to enter contests anymore. But, you know, if I'm in a fellowship or I have to, an executive, or I'm meeting with a producer who has read my script, you know, they're going to help, you know, there should be some more white space, or, you know, show don't tell. And I have to, and, you know, and I bite the inside of my cheek because I'm a good boy and I take notes.
Nice.
But, you know, I listen, I nod and listen, and, you know, I'm pinching myself. It's like, you're a douche. But I also know that they can't help themselves because that's how they learn
They've been brainwashed.
to give notes. So I give them some grace for that, and then I ignore it because they actually do. So if they give me notes in the script, they don't want to work with me, and that's fine. Now they're telling me something that they think I need to hear to make my script better, but that's not going to help me. And it just means that they need to say something. So understand as a writer, when you give somebody a script and you ask for notes, they're going to give you notes. And some of the times it's going to be uninformed, really ridiculous ways to speak.
I bet in my experience in the studio system, I would be very confident in saying more than half the studio and network executives I've ever worked with have a copy of Save the Cat on their
Yes.
desk or on their shelf
Mhm.
because they're not writers, they're not creators. So they read that and they're like, you know, I got hired. I talked about this once. I had a Netflix deal to write a movie for Netflix, and the executive they paired me with was like, I tell all my writers to do the Save the Cat beat sheet because I was in the outline phase of this movie, and she wanted me to literally do the Save the Cat beat sheet, and even emailed me the pages from that book.
Oh my God.
And I was frozen for 2 weeks because I couldn't do it because it was just turning out to be crap.
Yeah.
So finally I just like, I'm not going to do that, and I outlined the movie the way I outline all my stuff, and then once I was done with that, then I pulled out her beat sheets and I was like, okay, and forensic analysis after the fact, it fit right in.
Yeah.
But you can't write like that.
Can't write
It's
like that.
forensic analysis after the fact.
Yeah.
And so I turn it in, and she's like, see, I told you, Save the Cat, it's the best.
So one of the things I think that's important in terms of voice is, so that it doesn't feel like you're reporting, is what is the emotion that's happening?
Yeah.
Yes.
So you have to be an emotional. We're emotional people, right? We love, we hate, we fight, we do all the things. That has to go into our writing. We have to remember that for our characters. And we have to remember that for our scene directions as well, because that's part of the emotional journey. Most executives, people who are reading, skip over that part. They want to know, like, what are they saying? But if you make that part of the voice, part of the character, they'll read that, and it'll be a more complete experience for them, and they'll get who you are and the story that you're telling.
And it goes back to the essence of what is so important. I'm pretty sure Sidney talked about it in his book, and you definitely talked about it. You know, reading a script is supposed to be the same experience as watching a movie, in the sense that the viewer, the reader, is supposed to, the content is supposed to elicit an emotional response.
Yeah.
If it's scary,
That's your one job as a screenwriter.
That's it.
it's your one job. You have to, you know, the read has to be an emotional experience.
Have you read the Quiet Place script?
I read the interesting part.
Right? And that's it, right?
Yeah,
Some
right.
guru would say, listen, you just have one line on a page here. You can't do that.
You're
That's
going to
not
get
right.
kicked out of show
Kicked
business.
out of show business. Exactly.
And that screenplay,
Yes.
which had, again, like one line per page
Yeah.
for 5-6 pages,
Yeah.
sold to a major studio.
It launched the
from-
career of
and
those two writers.
They were unknown. That's what
Right.
gives-
Totally.
that's what makes
Yes.
me know that you're right.
Yes.
Is because
Yeah.
you know the biggest hesitation for me, because I was hearing two things.
Mm-hmm.
I was hearing voice, and I was hearing show, don't tell, and I was hearing only write what's on the screen, but I was also hearing be unique, like I was hearing all these things, and I was like, and I remember reading the La La Land script, and Laura loves La La Land, and in La La Land there are so many instances of Damien Chazelle writing beautifully of just like things you wouldn't even like think to imagine that would be
He's
in that
telling
movie.
the story.
He's
He's
telling
not reporting
he's telling
what's
the
on
story.
Yeah.
I remember reading La La Land, reading Everything Everywhere, and being like, so they're doing it, but I'm being told not to. And I think I remember I said, since I'm not in Hollywood yet, I have to meet them in the middle and do a little bit of what the screenwriters in Hollywood do, but not really do it all because I'm not in Hollywood yet.
Yeah, that's my biggest thing when I get
Yes.
the pushback from people going,
Yes.
well, those are A-list screenwriters.
Yeah.
They can write however they want. And that argument is so ridiculous, because if that's true, if it's, well, they're A-listers, they can write that way, then that means that when they were just starting out, they followed all the rules and they wrote, bad scripts that, had inciting incidents on this page and no telling, just reporting and all that. Then once they became A-listers, they suddenly changed the way they write. It's the most ridiculous argument. And I've heard even somebody, a person who, she actually had some television writing credits and came at me on TikTok about it. She ended up blocking me. And because she was like, well, those are A-listers, they can do whatever they want. And so I presented this argument that if you believe that, then that means that Tarantino and Scott Frank and Phoebe Waller-Bridge and all of them have scripts somewhere that were written by the numbers, that were bland and unoriginal, and then once they got famous and successful, they changed how they write. It's insane
Yeah.
to think that. The reason they became A-list screenwriters is because they wrote like Craig writes. They wrote in their own voice, their own way, their own story. They didn't give a damn.
Always wrote like Shonda Rhimes.
Exactly.
Always.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's and to me it's just sad how widespread it is. I know there's a TikTok there's a TikTok channel or Instagram or something that says like the rules of being a screenwriter, and you have to like literally just like makes a post, not even like someone like talking, like literally just posts slides of the rules.
Top 13 and a half rules for a
Hero's journey. Hero's
Oh,
journey.
the hero's journey. Oh my God. Yeah.
If you're gonna,
I have a whole section in my book about the hero's journey.
Okay, if you're gonna post on Instagram the hero's journey, and it has to be like this, and this, then every script is going to be the same because everyone's following the same format. Everyone's following the same structure. That is ruining, and I think so. I remember someone commented like, "This is why a lot of screenplays don't get sold, and this is why they suck."
There's so many. I would bet heavily the last 20 years since Save the Cat came out and everything after that, there have been more bad scripts written in the last 20 years than there were in the previous 40 years, probably. Because the reason I think I became successful in this industry is because I didn't have any of that. Like, I was starting out in the 90s. There wasn't Save the Cat. There wasn't social media. There wasn't YouTube. Or I would have been a train wreck because I would have tried to follow all the hacks and all the secrets. And instead, I didn't know any better. So I was just writing. It's like, oh, this is how Scott Rosenberg writes. I'm going to write like that. this is how Tarantino writes. Wow, I'm going to do that. I didn't know any better. Thank God. Because
So that's really how you learned, by reading their scripts,
Yeah.
seeing that their voice. And how did you find your voice in there?
Well, that's what I talk about in the book, is that we all, I think, do this. When you start out committing to being a screenwriter, at least for me and most people I know, you start out, if you're doing it correctly and not following all the cat saving stuff, you're just writing fan fiction of your favorite screenwriters, you know? And at the time, in the 90s, I loved Scott Rosenberg. He was my screenwriting hero. He wrote Things to Do in Denver When You're Dead, and Beautiful Girls, and Con Air, and on and on. And he had such an original voice. He got compared a lot to Tarantino, but they were very different. Scott was very much raised on literature and books and short stories and John Cheever, and he just wrote the coolest screenplays. So when I was starting out, I was doing my version of Scott Rosenberg, which was fan fiction. But the more I wrote, the less Rosenberg it became, and the more Guyot it became, until I just started trusting my own voice, you know? And the thing that launched my career, so back, this doesn't happen anymore, but in Hollywood back, because I'm so old, in the 90s and early 2000s, the way you got into television is you wrote spec scripts of existing shows. So I had written this episode of NYPD Blue, which was this massively popular show in the 90s, and I loved this show, and I watched it all the time, so I felt like I had a handle on the characters' voices and mannerisms, and I wrote this spec episode of NYPD Blue, and what got my first 3 jobs, and it was still being passed around like years later, because what I nailed was I had the voice of the show with the characters and the way they talk and everything, but I had written the script in my own voice. I didn't know I was doing that. And it wasn't until I had a meeting to get hired on Felicity where J.J. Abrams at the time said, "I love your voice, man." And I had no idea what he was talking about. And I was like, hey, thanks. And he's like, yeah, and the way, you know, you kept your own voice, but you still had a voice of the show. I loved what you did there. I didn't know what he was talking about. And thank God I didn't, because if I had tried to do that, I would have failed.
And you know, one of the things when we started making films. We made a lot of short films, and we would make them for actors. So an actor would say, "I want to be the romantic lead in a whatever," and my wife and I would look at some things. So we looked at, like, we stole, borrowed, co-opted a scene from, like, Out of Sight. Right? So there's a scene between J-Lo and George Clooney where they're falling in love, and it's like snow, and they're about to, and we was like, oh, let's do that. So I wrote my version of that scene, the exact same thing he's talking about. And we would do that all the time. We would get actors, say, I want to play this kind of role, and then we'd find the movie, and then I'd study the scene. And so I didn't read any of the Cat, so I own 3 copies of the Cat book. Because somebody would say, you should buy the Cat book. It's really, and I would read, it's like, this is garbage. I put it on the shelf, and then maybe a few years later, somebody would say, you know, you should read Save the Cat. Oh, yeah, I should. And then, so I had 3 copies, and I never read any of them. I never read McKee, I bought it. I never read all of those books. I have them all on my bookshelf. I didn't read any of them, because what I did was exactly what he said. I became a fan of these movies, and I wrote my own version of them. And that's how I developed my voice.
Okay. So I wanted to delve into a very specific aspect of writing.
Wait, can I just say, can we?
Excuse me?
Hey, can we get it?
He's got his.
Can we turn down the air, please?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
All like a dozen people in the
Yeah.
back row. That
Everybody's
really
freezing here. Sorry, you'll take off your
Don't
scarves
worry.
in a second. Thank you.
Thank
Okay.
Okay, so it's a very specific question, but like, I find that in the real world, in this real screenwriting world, there are still 2 conflicting principles of telling the story, and a part that you talk about like omitting needless words. And I always find that line so hard to walk, because sometimes I'll want to describe what a character looks like in that moment. I want to describe their face. I want to describe the atmosphere.
Sure.
But I also want to keep the tone of the scene. How do you guys walk that line of telling the story, but keeping it sometimes airtight or omitting needless words?
It's called writing. No, and I want to make it that simple because it is, right? So you wrote the version where you describe the face and the doorknob and the cat in the corner that has half of its hair missing and this, and you got the whole thing, you got all these things, and the person comes in and they're wearing blue shoes and red pants and they've got a green tie so there's ways of doing that, but you have to know that in order to get it down to something that is emotional and succinct. But you have to work through that in order to get there. So it's about the process, and the process of writing is what's the idea, and the idea can be big and bold, and you know all the things, you know everything you're seeing, and some things you're not, but you're just writing what you know. And in order to get to the point where somebody's gonna say, I got it, right? She dresses like a clown from Ringling Brothers, right? They live in an old broke down house that smells of cat and tuna fish, right? So then now that's your voice. Without giving me all of the details, you're giving me a sense of the world. But that's writing.
Yeah.
I think it comes. Yeah, I agree completely with Craig. It comes, and that's the thing that another thing that people really push back on is there's no shortcuts. There's no hack. It's writing and writing and writing. And every script you write, you're better when you start the next one. Every scene you write, you're better than you were the last one. Every sentence you write, you're better than you were the one before. And it's, you learn to find that balance. Like I talk about in the book, like that Michael Clayton scene with Michael Clayton and the horses, where he's got almost a page describing what's happening internally with this character. There's not a wasted word in that. Whereas all the gurus would say, Michael gets out of the car, he looks at some horses, and move on. So that's where more words are better, but the more you write, the more you find that rhythm and that fluidity. It's like music. You just feel like what sounds right and what sounds too much, and you know it really just comes with doing it again and again and again. And I wish there was a different answer. I wish there was a way to say, oh, you just do this, you know. But when you hear all professional writers always, when we talk about the rewrite process and we talk about cutting, and again, the gurus, the people that don't do it, think like, oh, that's all about page count because it's got to be under 120 or under whatever. It's not about page count. It's about the rhythm and the tone and the feel. When you can write something, like there's another scene of Michael Clayton when in that screenplay, when he introduces the character of Marty Bach, who was played by Sidney Pollack, who was Michael Clayton's boss. And I've heard Gilroy talk about this. The first 2-3 drafts, he had 3 or 4 lines of description to convey who this character was. Then he got it down to where it says, Marty Bach, the head of this firm, 1,000 neckties, a velvet switchblade. You know who that character is right there in those words. And that replaces 3 sentences of description. And that just comes with writing.
But also, you might be the writer. So if that's a Wes Anderson script, right? Wes Anderson might want to see everything on that, and he might write everything that's happening. So it always comes back to your voice and who you are as a writer. Because we can take that same Michael Clayton scene about the horse, and Michael Clayton's going to write it this way. I might just cut to horses, right? It's horses out there, right? Because that's me, that's my voice. I might find another way to do it. Wes Anderson would write it this way. He would write it this way. The point is to find who you are in the script and not think that your way is not the right way because somebody else wrote it that way.
That's a great point, because that goes right in to the bullshit of all of the screenwriting professors and websites and gurus that tell you this is how you do it, this is what structure is. Because, and I say in the book, like, you could give 10 different screenwriters the exact same log line, to write a script from, and those 10 scripts are going to be completely different. They're going to have different act ones, different act twos, different highs, different lows, and they're all going to be correct.
Yeah.
Because every writer's process is unique to them, and the only ones that are wrong are the ones that are telling you, oh, it has to all be like this.
Yeah. One of the biggest hurdles for me when crafting the whole story, it's usually once I finished my vomit draft, I just vomit everything out. I sort of, sometimes I'll, do this with the scenes. One of the biggest hurdles for me, and it's a big concern I have with my 146-page script, is that
It's a sitcom.
it's like keeping keeping the reader involved, because of course the script originally was 127 pages, and I was so scared to go over 120. And
So you went to 146?
no. But that's where I started. I remember I went to one of the administrators at my school who I talked to screenwriting about, and I said, it's 127, it's over 7 pages over the limit, what do I do? And he says, I don't know, maybe there's more you can cut down. And I'm like, I don't know, like I feel like it's like there's so much that's happened. It's a long story. It's based on a personal experience, and which is another hurdle I have. And once I read Paul's book, that's how it became 146. Because it's his fault.
I was wondering how it got there 146.
I added 20 pages to his screenplay.
Blame Paul. It literally 127 became 146 because of Paul's book. Because I was writing the emotion. I had a very.
How many screenplays have you written?
I've written 4 features, 3 pilots.
The draft that's 146. How many drafts of that screenplay have there been?
I don't keep count.
A lot.
A lot.
A lot.
That's good.
The first draft was. First draft was January, finished it January of 2022. I think I just did a pass weeks ago. I don't know. Do you like? I don't keep count about the amount of drafts. I just estimate at this. It's probably in its
How many
8th or 9th
people have seen it?
Not that many, because I can't even send it out to
You can't.
people for notes, because number one, well, before it was over 120, so I can't. So it's an extra $50. And now I don't want to send it to really anyone for notes, because first of all, it's 146 pages.
Yeah.
I only sent it to the people who that story is based off.
Do you have a writing group?
I don't.
Okay.
I mean, kind of. You want to read?
I'll read it.
Yes.
See, okay. So here's the thing.
You'll read it?
Yeah, you read it.
You'll
Yeah.
read it?
No, we're in a little bit of a writing.
Good.
It's not a group, but it's like a.
It's a meetup.
It's a meetup.
It's a meetup.
It's
Good.
good, though.
Good. No,
That's
it's
good.
really important. So here's what I'm hearing that I want you to think about just in future drafts. It's very hard to write in a vacuum, right? Because right now you're the only person who's seeing, hearing, judging, like everything that's in there. It's like, okay, it's 127. I can't send this to anybody. Why can't you? The rules, right? The bullshit rules that say it can only be 120. They're all here, right? You got to get those people out of your head,
Yeah.
right? Send it to him. Fuck him. You have to read 127 pages. It's not your problem. It's his. And he's got a few days to do it. He needs to get back to you with very substantive notes.
Yeah,
The other thing I would
also
say.
have a 108-page script. If you want that, if you'd rather.
He
read that.
should be reading all
But
of it.
one of the things that jumped out at me when you were just talking about this is you mentioned that it was a very personal story.
Yes.
And that
That.
is really difficult when people come to my website to have me help them with their screenplays and stuff. I run into that so often when people are so close to something, they don't see where they can cut. Like,
Yes.
but this whole scene with the goat actually happened, and it's like, well, but it doesn't serve the story.
Exactly.
And it's really difficult for everyone to detach themselves because it's like I've adapted stuff. I've adapted books and foreign films for screenplays, and it's the same thing. You've got to find the essence of the story, and that means kill your darlings. And there, I guarantee you, without even reading your script, there's probably 30 pages in it that you don't need. And I'm not saying because it's bad writing or anything, it's just you don't need it. But you think you do because, well, that's part of what happened.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
There's
interesting.
Is a writer, Antoine Fisher. He wrote the Antoine Fisher story. It is, 20, 25 years old, maybe, I'm not sure. But Denzel Washington directed it, and it's about his life. And so Antoine Fisher, he got his script to Denzel. Before he got it to Denzel, he wrote 70 drafts of his own story.
7-0.
7-0. After Denzel Washington signed on to be director, he wrote, he thinks, another 80 drafts. So, of his own story, the Antoine Fisher story, he wrote 150 drafts
His own story.
of his own story.
Yeah.
So that's what you're up against.
Yeah, I think I've realized I've come to the point
The
where
Max
I've
Kohn
realized
story.
Yes.
the Max Kohn story. I've come to the point where I've realized that this script, I will not be making this. This will not be my first. This will not be my second. This might be my third. This will probably be my fourth or fifth feature that gets made if I'm Jewish. Baruch Hashem, that happens. If
You
I
don't know that.
But don't think about that.
Yeah.
But I'm thinking like, I look at like.
Wait, did you just
very-
hear what we both said to you?
What?
Did you hear what both of us literally just said to you
What,
while
don't
you're
think
over
about-
here quelling?
Okay, but the question.
No. I want you to take this in,
Yes.
right? You said 4/5, and he said, what did he say?
Don't think about that.
And what did I say?
Don't think about that.
And I said, you don't know that.
Or
So
you-
we're both saying to you, you're worried about shit that is none of your concern. You are overthinking this.
It's being outcome result based
Yes.
as opposed to process based.
Yes.
That script may be the first thing you ever sell. You don't know.
You don't know.
It may be Bradley Cooper's next Oscar thing. You don't know. You can't think about that stuff. You have to just write that. You have to work on your other stuff, and it has to be about the process. You can only control what you can control. And when you think about, and I don't mean you, I mean everyone.
Yes.
When you start to think about, well, this thing's so personal, so big, it's not going to be my first. I'm going to have to write something else to sell and all that. Then you're just getting in your own way, and you're not keeping it clear for your best creativity to come out.
Well, okay. The reason I say it's going to be my fourth.
So just fuck everything we just said. Here is what I'm here to say.
I'm
Because
telling
it's the
you.
Max Show.
I'm telling
and
you. I'm
we're
sorry.
here for your
Okay.
therapy session. Fine, go ahead.
I'm saying that the film is going to be very expensive to produce because it takes place in a camp.
And are you going to...
Why are you worried about
Why
budget right
budget?
now?
Because I'm just thinking about. I know.
Why?
Why?
Because if I'm going to self-produce something, it's going to be another screenplay then.
But why are you thinking about self-producing?
Because I'm producing short films, and I'm going to.
But that has nothing to do with this 146-page script.
Okay. Yeah, you're right. Okay.
It's just, but this is a great thing to talk
Yes,
about.
I
It's
think
like
it's really important.
this
The
is how
question
people
that I
fall
actually
into
wanted
it.
to ask was, and I guess you kind of answered it, was how do I, in your process, how do you make sure that the scenes that are going on are working, are eliciting emotional response, or are interesting to the viewer? Because we are all different people. Something that's
Do you find it interesting?
I do. I find it interesting. I just don't know if other people do.
Because you're not letting anybody read it.
Okay.
And it goes back to, no, but this is true, and it goes back to what Craig originally said, and we talked about, is we write for ourselves, you know. Tarantino writes for himself. He doesn't care, and that's how he became successful, not because he's successful. Aaron Sorkin was a playwright. He didn't care. Like, he wrote A Few Good Men. The first draft was 190 pages. Yeah. It's like, and so that's good, but you have to give it out. Like, you remember in my book when I talk about the heist script that I wrote, and at one point, 5-6 drafts in, I thought, this is ready for my agents. It's ready for my reps. And I sent it to John Rogers, a writer who's better and more experienced than I am, and he's like, nope, your protagonist sucks. Mm-hmm. And I didn't know, and I mean, this was 20 years into my career, and still I missed it because I got obsessed with the mechanics of the story and what might be and how cool it'll be to have watches in movies for the first time and all that. I completely missed the most important thing, which is the character stuff. And so it was other people looking at it that had to come to me and say, dude, no. And I had to do a page 1 rewrite after I had written 5 or 6 drafts of this 20 years into my career.
Yeah.
Because I missed it totally. So don't beat yourself up, and also let other people read it. And it doesn't matter if they're not professional screenwriters, if they're just at your level or even lower or whatever, like I talk about, because first of all, you're not paying them. Don't send it to these ridiculous websites because you don't know who's giving you notes. But when you send it to friends, when you send it to other people, you know who they are. You have a frame of reference for what type of person they are, what their writing ability and level is, so you can process their notes much, much better than an email from some nameless, faceless entity.
So,
no, we won't read it.
Yeah.
No, go ahead.
I was not.
So here's the thing that you are going, because I was making things, was writing things, and also producing them. What I had to do was not hire the producer until the screenplay was done.
Yeah.
So I had to make sure this guy, the producer, did not show up.
Craig T. Williams.
Craig T. Williams, the producer. I'm not hiring him until it shows up. And once it's done, right, once we go into production, I fire the screenwriter. So Craig T. Williams, the screenwriter, is not allowed on set unless it's an emergency and then we need to call him in to like fix something or do that. But then I send him right home in an Uber because fuck him, he's annoying, right? So, but it really is that sort of schism that you have to have, and it takes practice to write things and not say, well, I can't afford it. Well, I'm gonna shoot this and I can't afford this scene on the top of the Empire State Building with 3 people in helicopters swirling around. I can't afford that, so I can't write it. But you have to write it, right? And once you get to production, then you'd be like, Max, are you fucking serious? We got 3 helicopters swirling around Empire State Building. We're gonna have 2 dudes on tricycles in Central Park. That's what we're gonna have, right? So then you adjust, but you gotta get out of your head that you need to be producing this as you write.
Usually what I do is that if I...
Did you hear what I said?
Yes.
Okay. Because you have a problem.
Yeah, no, I know. I heard you. I'm telling you what I do. When I encounter that problem, usually what I do is that I write it whatever way I want.
Yeah.
With everybody. If I know I can't produce it, I put it.
I do want to say one thing that I really respect about you, especially because you're young, and the fact that when you started telling us how much you've written, you're so far ahead of 90% of the other people, because Craig and I encounter people just like you who are like, oh, it's my first script, oh, it's my second script, and they don't understand why it's not being produced
8 years
at Paramount. Right. And so, like, kudos to you. No, that's great, because you're a writer, man. You are writing, you are producing content, you are writing fade out again and again and again, and that puts you so far ahead of the other people.
Yeah. One of, what was I going to say? One of my, I was going to say something about the stupid, it got lost.
Mess.
It got lost.
Max, how
We've
long do we
beaten
have
him.
space?
Until 9.
Should we see if anybody wants to talk about their personal experience?
time-
Or they have
what
any
time is it?
questions?
20
it's like
till
8:45.
20 till 9?
Yeah.
Yes, because you wouldn't shut up.
Okay.
Do you have questions?
Oh, wait.
Yeah. Okay, sorry, you're in charge.
Hold on. Okay. I want to talk about one last thing. I guess I'm going to make it a two-part question because I had two questions. I'm going to put it in one question. Okay. So, last year's strike, a devastating strike that put so many screenwriters out of work and was, generally a negative experience for screenwriters. It did produce a valid conversation about AI. Maybe this is just me plugging that the Student New York Film Festival is banning AI, that films made with AI in any capacity will no longer be considered at the Student New York Film Festival in the future. I wanted to know your guys', obviously there's been so many advancements since last summer. There's been so many advancements. Do you fear for the future and of screenwriting when it comes to, in terms of like art? Are you optimistic? And I know we talked about this on email, like, are you specifically, there's been a big diversity push in the past 2 years. Are you...
It's over.
It's over.
Yes.
What's the confidence?
You had a good run.
It did.
I guess now you answered it, but what is the confidence level you have with AI and diversity?
I don't give a fuck. I just don't. It's not my job. I have decided who I am and what my skill set is, and that's where I live. Period. I'm a writer, and I write shit, and I write shit that get people to read it.
But like from what you've seen,
Yeah.
From your fellow writers or
Yeah.
from yourself, do you feel like the big diversity push that happened in 2020? It's kind of like is it? Do you see it manifesting, or
Don't
do you
get me
see
in
it die
trouble.
now?
It is. It has. It has certainly waned, right? We see DEI programs. We see executives being fired. We see whole departments being eliminated. They've just decided that it's not important anymore. But it wasn't important before. It was a lot of performative stuff, and I've been in a few fellowships. And what I know for sure, that no matter what, I have to get up and do my job. And I don't live in the space of, am I the diversity hire or am I not? I am a black man who tells black family stories. I am humorous, I am funny, I am dramatic, I write my heart on the page, and AI can't do that. And if AI could, then it can have my job, and then I'll do something else. But for right now, that's my skill set. And until it does not serve me any longer, in terms of, that's why what Paul was saying, I don't worry about outcome, because it's none of my business. I only have to concentrate on who I am. And I write not for the sale, even though I absolutely want the sale. Even though I absolutely want to be hired. I mean, I'm not Pollyannish. I have a 19-year-old I'm raising, right? So I understand that as the business, but I also understand that I am where I am because a lot of relationships that I've made, that I've nurtured, and those people value what I do. And that's all I can do for right now.
I can't add anything to that. I'll just talk about like the strike part of it. It was, the longest strike, and it was horrendous in a lot of ways. And of course, the media and all the people who are not WGA members love to say, "Oh, it was devastating, and it was this and that." The reality of this strike was, we made the greatest gains that we have ever made in the history of the WGA. And the whole reason was because of the AI thing. And by what I mean is, when this strike happened, see, this strike was different than any previous strike because, and we do this every 3 years with the studios. Before, the studios were movie and TV studios. They're not that anymore. They're tech companies.
Yeah.
So this time, it was Apple and Amazon and even Netflix and Universal and Disney, and what we do as screenwriters is less than 5% of their revenue. So they didn't give a shit. That's why in all those days and days and days, they never even came to the negotiating table. The heads of the studios, which generally in all the previous years we've struck and had these negotiations, they come to the table. They never showed up because they didn't care, because it didn't matter. The only reason the strike got settled, and literally you can look this up, it happened 72 hours after this happened. Authors, book writers filed a class action suit against OpenAI, and these were a murderer's row of authors. It was John Grisham and George R.R. Martin and J.K. Rowling, like the biggest authors in the world filed a class action suit.
Because their stuff had been stolen.
Right, because AI can't think for itself. It can only process what already exists and then take it and make something. And when that happened, literally 72 hours after that lawsuit was filed, the heads of the studios were like, we're going to come to the negotiating table. Yeah. Because the only thing they fear more than losing money is getting sued. And so they showed up, and it wasn't even a negotiation. It was like, what do you want? Okay.
There you go.
And we got massive, massive gains. Thank God for the book authors, or else they would have never come to the table, because they honestly believed their whole business model was for television series. They hire one writer who writes the pilot. All the scripts are written by AI, and then that one writer goes and rewrites them and tweaks them and stuff. That was what they thought the future of television was going to be. Same for features. Instead of hiring writer after writer after writer, they buy the script from one writer. AI generates all the rewrites, and that one writer oversees it. It's a fortune, saving a fortune of money. Because people don't realize it's not just the salaries to the writers, it's paying into the health fund and paying into the 401ks and all that stuff. They were looking to save all that money. That's why AI was so important to them. So now that we've changed it, I mean, it's going to be another war 3 years from now. But that's why it happened, and that's why it got settled. And what Craig's saying is exactly right, is AI can't. What's funny, I have a friend, Craig Mazin, who's a very successful screenwriter, and he and a guy named John August have a podcast called Script Notes, which I recommend to everyone. So they had an episode where they had AI write a screenplay, and it's hilarious because it's so absolutely awful. It makes Blake Snyder look like Frank Pearson. It's just like unbelievably bad. Because AI cannot think for itself. It has no imagination. It can only take what already exists and then just reformat it and reword it. And so I don't fear that. And maybe there will come a time where all of Hollywood is at, and then, I'll do something else. Like Craig and I will open a lemonade stand.
Yeah. Right.
And, but that's really it.
Yeah.
So I'm so sorry for the short amount of time, but questions from the audience.
Okay, wait, before you, somebody in the back? Okay, we're going to let her go first, all right? Everybody keep it down.
What's your name?
Carlos.
Hey, Carlos.
So nice to meet you guys. So, my question is, what if you have a script it's personal to you based off your experience, but it's kind of so heartbreaking, but you're ready to get opinions, but you're afraid of maybe the opinions or, what they might think,
You're being vulnerable.
Yeah. How do you get over that feeling or that possible anxiety?
Okay, the quick answer is get over it, right? But the more complicated answer is the process, right? So when you write something personal, right, that really feels like it comes from your experience, you want to make sure that you are okay where you are now, right? So if you're not ready, don't share it. But you have to do the work to get ready. Because if this is the story you want in the world, then you have to deal with whatever that thing that happened to you so you're not re-injuring yourself again. So whatever work you have to do, whether that's whatever practice you have, spiritual, whatever, to deal with that so that you're not feeling like you're hurting yourself again. But it's a very vulnerable place, right? If I send my script to Paul, it's vulnerable. I gotta open it. It's the same thing if I send it to my agent, if I send it to my wife reads it. Oh my God, do you know how vulnerable that is for my wife to read my work? She's brutal, right? She's it's not right. Yeah. And that's it. And I'm I'm in the fetal position for 3.5 days, right? So, but because it's what we do.
Yeah.
But the world needs that. The world needs you to tell your story, and it needs your perspective. It needs your voice. So remember that there's a higher calling, because I really believe that there's a higher calling. So it's not just about me.
I also, there are screenwriters in, you haven't gotten any criticism, but there are screenwriters in Hollywood that have gotten their films wrecked on review sites. There are filmmakers, there are screenwriters.
I just want to go on record and say Cats has a lower Rotten Tomatoes rating than Geostorm. That's all I'm going to say.
But seriously, there are screenwriters who, I don't know, the one I think about all the time is Damien Chazelle really made a good film. I won't say it's great. I'll say I think it's a good movie. Babylon got wrecked at the box office. Got wrecked on the reviews, but he's still going. He's gonna make another one. You gotta have a thick skin. You gotta envision yourself releasing this film to millions of people, and sort of just being ready. That's why I'm thinking of quitting Twitter
Please do.
Once I become a filmmaker that has films in theaters. I don't want to read that garbage. Your protagonist doesn't have a good...
Your script's 40 pages too long.
Yeah, or it's the last 20 minutes weren't that... I'm really thinking about... I love Twitter, but I'm really thinking of getting off of it once I become... I think I'm
successful.
Yeah.
Successful.
Here's what I would say is what everything Craig said, yes, and the thing you have to remember, and it's difficult. All, meaning 100%, all art is subjective.
Yes.
No matter how great, there is not one single film that's ever been made that everyone loved.
Yeah.
The Godfather, there are people that think The Godfather sucks.
Terrible.
It's just part of being an artist. There are paintings that are universally revered as brilliant that people hate.
Could use more blue.
It's just part of the life of an artist. And what we do, it's so difficult because the only way we truly succeed is by exposing ourselves and putting ourselves out there. And what I would say to you, because I understand how difficult it is and how painful and terrifying it is, the one example I love to use in this situation is a film from many years ago called Mississippi Masala. Did you ever see it? One of Denzel's very early films. It is one of the most small, specific stories you could ever imagine, yet it is such a universal tale. The person who wrote that film and directed that film, it was so singular to them and so personal to them, and that's what made it great.
Yeah.
That's what made, I'm the furthest human being from the characters in that story, and yet I'm bawling at the end, That's what you've got to trust, is that there's 7 billion people on the planet, Your story's not unique. Somebody is going to be moved by your story, and that's what we hang on to.
And you don't have to please an entire audience. You just have to please the audience that is seeking the story you're telling.
Yeah. And just understand, no matter how good it is, there are going to be people that hate it.
Yeah.
It's just part of the life of an artist.
That reminds me, Greta Gerwig said something okay, well, a certain amount of million people watch movies in the United States. If I can make Barbie likable for 90% of the population, then, or 70% of the population, then that's millions of people. That's millions of dollars at the box office.
It's not even that many. Yeah, exactly.
10% of the
10%.
Yeah,
I mean, that's...
So, I remember she has some quote, look up the quote, but she said if I can, get a certain amount to like my movie, and that's good. Okay, you had a quick question?
Yeah,
And quick answer.
how do you navigate in this industry after grad school and before your breakthrough, whatever that means? Like, how do you find mentors? Because I think like the lack of guidance is just very often very overwhelming. Like, how much time do I spend for writing? How much time do I spend to apply for opportunities? Like, yeah, like, and which opportunities are actually worth it? Like,
This is the mentor king. He should answer
yeah,
that.
like, just how do you find, because I used to have a mentor and I felt like she was putting something on me that was just not me, and I lost like my joy for writing.
Yeah.
Because it was so like shoehorned into, and I love writing so much, but I didn't.
Yeah.
So like, how do you find people who make you better and not put themselves and
So a lot of times when people ask for a mentor, they're looking up, right? They're looking at the whatever that is, right? They're looking at the person that, wrote the thing, the big movie, or works in the big TV show. My greatest mentors have been my peers and they're my friends, right? And so starting a writing group, I couldn't find one, so I built it myself. And I've had one for 15 years, and I've watched each one of those people like explode, right? This one's making this movie, this one's directing here, this one's in this film. But we learned together, and they were my greatest mentors. Now, I'm not lucky, I worked my ass off. I have developed relationships with other people, Paul. There are lots of mentors. That's because I made myself available by learning what a mentor has to do. So the thing that I always say to people, if you want a mentor, be a mentor. You have a skill set that is valuable to somebody, teach somebody something, because you also have to learn what it is the mentor is giving up and what they're doing and how their life is, that they're real people. They're not just there to come down from the mountain and give you the secrets to life. It's a relationship. So you need to find out what kind of writer you are, right? What do you need to move to the next step, right? What is the next step? Do you see yourself as a TV writer, as a feature writer, as a director? Who models that? Who can you reach out to that is in a place where you want to be, and then ask?
Because generally, the best mentors are going to be the people that don't call themselves mentors.
Yes.
If somebody's like, "Hey, I'll mentor you," run.
Right. Yeah.
Okay, I'm so sorry that we can continue this outside, but we
On the street?
on the street.
Like vagabonds?
No, we can't.
I mean, we have to go.
We have
leave.
60 people in here.
Right.
We're
Guys,
gonna
I'm so sorry.
Thank you, everybody.
Please,
Love
thank
you.
you so much for coming to
Bye,
our
YouTube.
screenwriting talk with the amazing Paul Guyot, amazing Craig T. Williams.
The amazing Max Kohn.
Thank
Yes.
you. Thank
And
you.
the Student Film Festival.
Student New York Film Festival.
Yes.
Okay, and the video?